Okay, colleagues, looks like we are live here. So I'm excited to talk with you today about questions that people have asked me. I'm very excited to say that this is the 13th year that my blog has been around, DaveStewartJr.com. 13 years old, it's officially a teenager. So something that I was very curious about 13 years ago or more was how do people do this? How do they write the books and do the speaking and all this stuff? And especially I was interested in people who, like me, wanted to stay in the classroom and not leave the classroom per se, but also wanted to just share thinking and learning and research and stuff with the broader world. So what I did is on Thursday, one of those days, I put a call out to my readers of any questions that they would like to ask me as just a way to pay it forward and kind of show a peek behind the curtain. Not everyone is interested in stuff like this. Most people that I know, like literally 99%, are not interested at all. So this will probably be a smaller viewed video, but I think if it could just help one person to be encouraged and maybe follow an inclination that they have inside of their heart to do the writer-teacher thing or the creator-teacher thing, then it will be worth an hour of my Friday afternoon. So if you're here live, then you can ask questions live. I'll see those. And without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into it here. All right, test. Yeah, it looks like I'm getting audio. Okay, so first question is, in what ways did your immediate family, spouse, and children succeed at making you feel supported? I love this question because my secret to success is probably definitely that my spouse, Crystal, has been a huge support to me over the years. Obviously, with the travel that it requires for me to go lead professional development in different places, most of the time my family doesn't come because that would be really expensive and disruptive to our life. So when I do travel, obviously Crystal is single parenting, and she's encouraged me a lot along the way, especially at first when I was starting out and nothing's really happening in terms of like book deals and things like this. She was amazing. So I will thank her first, and then my children are just they ask good questions sometimes. They understand that dad has to travel sometimes. I would say that outside of my travel, this work hasn't really impacted my life too much because I am pretty strict with when I allow myself to work on these types of projects, and I try to keep that before I come home for the day. I really don't have a habit of working at home, and that early on was harder in the years when I was just trying to write a lot and build a bit of an audience. But now it's like I actually have to really drum up a lot of motivation inside myself to even want to do writing work at home. So, but they're amazing, and absolutely, they are the Crystal and Hattie and Laura and Marlena and Dean. They are the 5 people who most inspire me to do this work because I want to do a good job for them out in the world. So that's that. Backstory of my books. So I'll just kind of walk you through the books that I've written briefly and share the backstory. So back in the day, my blog was called Teaching the Core. And I selected that because it was a very niche topic. And I had done some research that said you when you're starting out as a writer, pick like a really small arena, ideally an arena that's developing or, where there hasn't been a ton of coverage, and just try to become like a mini expert in that arena. So at the time that I started my blog, which I can like show you what it looked like at first. Actually, Internet Wayback Machine, Teaching the Core. That'll be interesting. Yeah. So let's pop in here. So basically, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about the Common Core standards. So you can see 2012. Let's go back to the earliest little snapshot here. I guess I probably should have tested how this website works. All right, we'll go here, 2013. So I didn't know anything about the Common Core at all. I didn't really know anything about standards. So I was really, at first that might sound like a drawback, but I would say that was one of my secrets to success. my lack of knowledge about standards, my lack of like really paying attention to standards in the first few years of my career, it enabled me to write from a place of a true novice, a novice developing mastery. And I just think that it's kind of engaging for people who are in a similar spot, who are like, I'm hearing a lot about these standards, maybe I should learn about them. They go online and they Google and they find this guy talking about the non-freaked out approach to the Common Core. So I pretty much just read through the standards, wrote about them as I went, and then I started to develop like sort of an organizing framework for thinking about the standards without going crazy and just being all standards obsessed. And that first, I would say 9 months of blogging is what eventually led to some editors reaching out and offering me a chance to publish my work with them. So Josie Bass Wiley, those are the folks that ultimately got my first book. And that book's called The Non-Freaked Out Guide to Teaching the Common Core. Not much to it. Definitely more of an artifact of history. But that like got me started and showed me that, even a guy who definitely doesn't know it all, in fact is quite a novice in a lot of ways, can actually get a book in print. And so that's the story with this one. But as this book was coming out, I was getting invited more to schools to lead professional development. So I had a little, no, I don't even think I had it yet. Eventually I started to just have on my website like, hey, you can have me come to your school. And so I started to go to schools and I started to have to lead professional development for whole secondary staffs about literacy standards. So this started to really get me thinking about, there we go. So it started to really get me thinking about like, oh, that's not going to work. Oh, no, it is going to work. It just started to force me to realize that I've got to work hard to try to make these standards relevant to the actual concerns of math teachers, the actual concerns of science teachers, the actual concerns of teachers of visual arts or performing arts. And so I started to try to reduce them down and think about ways that core areas of these standards could actually help. I mean, look at this little punk right here. You know what I'm saying? This guy's just a little baby. So basically, the next book that I wanted to write, it took probably 5 straight years. So this one came out in 2014, and so the next book that I wanted to write, I actually sought out the publisher Corwin Literacy, and I had started to meet other authors. So I was very grateful for Lisa Ludicky at Corwin Literacy, who led that imprint, still does today. And they gave me a shot to write a book that was kind of like my take on how do you reduce all of good teaching at the secondary level. How do you reduce it down into as few things as possible? And I was greatly inspired by Mike Schmoker's book, Focus. Greatly inspired by Focus. That book, is right up there with the most impactful book in my journey as a teacher and a learner, because, he was just so obsessive in his book about 3 things that schools need to focus on. So I really approached it from, a practical instructional standpoint, whereas Mike's book's like whole schools standpoint. But this was really like, what could you do as a teacher just if you could get good at just 6 areas? What should those 6 areas be? And let's imagine that you could actually just be mediocre or satisfice all the rest of the areas. Let's imagine that. What would that look like? And so this book lays out my argument, which is that if you become really good at cultivating student motivation, arguing, getting kids arguing about the stuff that they're learning, so doing like debates and stuff, you can have them building knowledge, and then reading, writing, and speaking. Those are the 6 things that this book is about. So that came out in 2018. But as I was writing that book, I started to be very, very aware of the fact that I had a lot more. I felt like I just had a lot more that I needed to say and needed to learn about student motivation. And so my next project, which took another 5 years, was The Will to Learn. So that came out in 2023. And basically with that book, I was just trying to go heavy, deep into the student motivation chapter of these 6 things. So, I could get super nerdy about a lot more details with that whole writing process and writing journey. Oh, I don't want to forget this one. So this is a part part of a series that Corwin Literacy did, and I actually was basically the reason I wrote this book is because these two other names, Matthew Johnson and Matthew Kay, and I just thought it'd be really fun to write a book with those guys. So this was a joint project, the only joint project that I've ever done. Yeah, so that's the backstory on those books, kind of where they came from in my heart. But if there's a theme to all my work, it is this: how do we produce optimal outcomes through our work in the classroom without sacrificing our lives on the altar of success? Like, that is what it's all about to me. Because if I got to sacrifice my life, I got to sacrifice, my wife and my family and all this. I'm just not going to be able to really do that long term, nor is that very appealing to me. So I'm going to real quick check to make sure we don't have any other questions that have come in. Okay, hey, Caroline. Caroline asks, how did the leading professional development start? That's a really good question. So as I was kind of going through the internet Wayback Machine here and clicking on my website, you can see how, so this was November 10th, 2013. So about a year and a half into this writing journey, that's when I finally decided I'm going to hang out my shingle. And I'm just going to say, I can do this. I know this well enough where, hey, feel free to have me out to your school. And I started to mention it in my blogs, like, that I was doing this. And so, it's a need. It was a need, at least. Common Core professional development was a need. So folks started to reach out to me. And then you got to figure out, and here's where I just went to mentors that I had kind of collected through writing the blog, like what's a contract? How do you write a contract? How do you figure out your prices? And just all these little nitty gritty questions. How do you, like, which airline do you fly? All these different things. But, I would say the key with the leading professional development, if you approach it the way that I did, which was like, I didn't have like a big network of school leaders like some people might. I didn't have like anything like that. I didn't really have a social media following per se. So it was really just about writing useful material for teachers, reminding them that I have this service, and then getting those first opportunities to go out and then basically just learning every single time. So I think the reason that the leading PD thing worked for me is because, I don't know, I think there's a shortage of great PD. I don't think that's even a controversial statement. So there's a shortage of great PD in every content area. And Caroline, you being a math teacher, I think, that's like always a need, really effective tools that math teachers can use. But I started to, because I started with the Common Core, I was always typically invited to work with like the whole secondary staff. And so, the more I did it, the better I got. I'd say it probably took 100 times to where I started to feel truly comfortable. And I've written on the blog actually about some of the things I learned about dealing with performance anxiety, because that was a real thing for me. Unfortunately, people that write or make videos or whatever, a lot of them are like me, where they're pretty introverted. I'm real comfortable reading a book, real comfortable having a conversation with somebody about teaching, but you start to get in front of staff, and a lot of people always don't want to be there, and it was just daunting at first. One little trick that helped me out a lot is I would tell myself, this is not going to be the worst PD that these people have ever had. It's not going to be the worst PD that these people ever had. That kind of helped me gain some early confidence. And shoot, I just lost that thought. Well, anyways, I don't know how I would get PD work if I wasn't also writing. I don't know how I would do that. There are people who do it. One of my early mentors, Steve Seward, who was the curriculum director at my school, Cedar Springs, for a number of years early on in my time here, he does PD all over the place, did it all over the place, and really didn't have much of like a blog or anything. I mean, he had a website, but it was just really positive word of mouth in our area about how excellent he was at it. So, and then once you start doing it, you just start really having that lens on every time that you're in PD. You start to notice things that drive you crazy. And I always kind of told myself, well, if it drives me crazy in PD, probably there's someone in every professional development setting that will also be driven crazy by it. So let me try to not do that. So like, for example, when I lead PD, I typically don't put put the people I'm working with in a position of like just pure student. Like I don't treat them like I would treat my students. I treat them more like colleagues. I think too, it took me it took me quite a while to understand that when you're leading PD, it's really not about you. It's about the people that are in there. It's about the fact that these people have actual needs. They have actual concerns, frustrations, and these are things really that you're there to serve. And along the way, you're trying to give them something useful. And it can be tempting as a PD presenter to fall into the trap of, well, to give them something useful, I just have to give them stuff to do tomorrow. But I found you actually want to do that, plus give them useful ways to think. Because that's, to me, really great PD. It doesn't just give me something to use tomorrow. Because not everybody in a PD wants something to use tomorrow. They already know what they're going to use tomorrow. But we always can benefit, all of us, from being able to think better about teaching. So that's kind of the dance that I do when I lead professional development. Now it's a great source of joy. When I go to Missouri at the end of this month, it's going to be a great source of joy to get to go and just be with teachers and think together about teaching and learning. I really love that part of my job now, whereas before it would, I would just be anxious about it right up until it happened. So I'm thankful for that it's just another way to be a teacher. Good question that I get a lot. How do you find the time to write or create while teaching full-time? So I haven't taught full-time every year of these 13 years. There have been times when I was writing The Will to Learn, I was actually down for a couple of years to 0.4 of a teacher load, because that book just required so much research and time, and the professional development was supplementing my income enough where I could kind of maintain a full-time teacher's income while doing both. But for most of these 13 years, it's been a full-time deal. And essentially my answer is that you just have to really take what you can get. And you got to try to set aside, like, my core output is blog articles. They're about 1,000 words, and I've written about 1,000 of them. So at this point, a blog article, I can have an idea during fourth hour, sit down during lunch, and have that thing almost kind of done by the end of lunch. Then come back at the end of the day, put some finishing touches on it, give it a reread, and schedule it for publication. But if I was like a perfectionist about my writing, which I'm not, on the blog especially, then I think it would be much harder, because it would just take a lot more time to write an article, and I wouldn't be able to keep the cadence that I've found is important for me, which is about 2 articles per week during the school year. So about 80 articles to 100 articles per year is what I usually write. But books add a whole extra layer on top. And books, unlike blog articles, are like never done until they're done. This is part of why I've only written a couple. And I really, I showed you the 4 books that I've written, but I really, when people ask me how many books you've written, I really say, well, kind of like 2 that were like with me for a significant portion of my life and would not leave me. So what I'm describing is that book writing for me is, it's quite a journey, emotional, spiritual, intellectual, physical. So I pick my shots very slowly when it comes to writing books, and I make sure that it's something that, like when I wrote these 2 books, I had learned from this book. This book came out in 2014, and I basically learned that, by the time 2015 hit, I wasn't even really using a lot of these standards in my work because the nation was transitioning away from the Common Core. So when I set out to write these, I just said, I got to be writing about stuff that I'm likely to still be using and enjoying and experimenting with 10 years after the book's publication. So this one's getting, this is its 8th year out on the market, and I'm still, like, every year. I mean, I'm working on a blog article right now about what I've done with the writing chapter in that book this year in my classes. So I would say all those things kind of factor in to the reality of what this question's getting at, which is time is absolutely the biggest hurdle. But, I write about this a lot, like constraining my schedule for teaching so that I'm not overdoing my teaching workload, just focusing on the fundamentals and creating enjoyable, productive lessons for my students without any bells and whistles. So all the stuff that I write about is really the answer to this question. And of course you got summers. And summers, I often work, on a week when we're not traveling or on vacation, I'll work 20 to 30 hours every week in the summer. And that's typically doing those bigger type projects such as books or courses, a bunch of videos that I maybe want to publish on YouTube. I'll try to do a lot of that kind of work. Last summer, I went and organized my blog a lot more to make like some anchor articles that link out to a lot of my other articles, because at this point my blog's, it's just like 1,000 articles, so it's not really accessible. So that's kind of what I do with that. That was a great question, though. How do you get started writing or speaking? So we kind of touched into that, but I would say this is something that I didn't know that I learned early on. Every publisher, so I've just got Corwin's website pulled up. Every publisher, so you look on your professional development book shelf and you say, okay, Josie Bass Wiley, or you say, okay, Corwin, and you go to their website, and typically all of them, you scroll down to the bottom, there'll be something like this, something that is telling authors what to do if they want to write with the publisher. So you click on that, and it's going to basically, lots of stuff, but yeah, they're all going to ask you for a prospectus or a proposal. One thing I respect about Corwin is that when you create this proposal for them, and it's a significant project, it's a good summer project, you're going to have to go through everything. You're going to have to go through, what's the book about? You're going to have to say who's the audience for. You're going to have to do like some market research and just like analyze. So like, what other books are there on student motivation, and what approach do they take, and how does what you're proposing take a different approach? So they basically require you to show like you're aware of the market, you're aware of the fact that publishers need to bring on books that they can expect will find a market. They want to know that you have a plan to market the book. Okay, so this can be things like talking at conferences, putting in proposals at conferences and talking. This can be things like if you're part of any teacher communities, any type of online communities, things like that. They just want to know, do you have an idea for how to get your book out into the world? And then you have to, of course, give your table of contents, your TOC. You got to write an introduction, typically is what they have you start with. And yeah, so that's a lot of work. So then you send it to them. And what I was going to say I respect about Corwin is that they actually will then send your proposal to some reviewers. And they pay people, teachers, administrators, college professors, like whoever they think your market is, they'll send it out to those people. They'll have them give feedback on the proposal, and then it will go before their leadership people, and they'll let you know, like, okay, you can write a book for us. Here's a contract. One thing that is difficult about publishing in education is that, if you've ever heard of authors getting big advances for their books, like in the broader publishing world, that's not really a thing in educational publishing. So typically all that you'll ever earn off your book are the royalties that the book earns. And so, I would say book writing is, unless you're Fisher and Fry. Like it's not like a get rich quick scheme, but it's, so you just have to have more reasons than just, well, I'm gonna be getting this huge advance, or I'm gonna, be getting tens of thousands of dollars in royalties. Like, if that's the main reason that you want to write a book, I would not recommend it in the teaching space, at least, because your books really are primarily going to spread through word of mouth if they're good, and then through whatever you're doing online. The publisher will do things too, and this is another thing to kind of research when you're identifying what publishers that you'd like to use. I love Corwin. I think they do a good job trying to get their books out there. I think they have a reputation for producing pretty darn good books. So I certainly recommend Corwin to people, but Josie Bass Wiley is a big one. Heinemann is a big one. ASCD is a big one. And then, okay, here's a good question from Caroline. So how do you find teacher communities? I don't really know because I'm not really like part of any online teacher communities outside of my blog. I know, like, back in the day when Twitter was Twitter, there was a lot of teacher activity on there. I am just not a heavy social media user, and so, but I'm sure that there's Facebook groups that are big and thriving for teachers. I'm sure there's probably still people on X that talk about teaching, and Instagram, and teacher talk is a big thing that I hear about when I travel. So, like, yeah, so really my community is the blog that I've created, and all I would say for social media, Caroline, when you're starting out, it's like, I know I have a question here, like, how would I start today? Yeah, okay. This is a good question. That's kind of related. So if I was starting today, I would only be considering two options. I wouldn't be trying to build a big Instagram following or TikTok or whatever. Partly because those platforms aren't life-giving to me. I don't want to spend a ton of time on there. And partly because those platforms are super, I would say, unstable. So if you just look at all the kerfluffle around TikTok in the last year, that's what I mean. I would hate to be in a position where all of a sudden, because of this or that policy, I'm like, I've developed this following that I'm hoping to promote my book through this following or whatever, and now all of a sudden the platform's at risk, or Meta decides to introduce AI bots into the Instagram feed. So just all the algorithmic stuff annoys me, and I just think is like, it's just like dangerous. So if I had to start today, I probably would start with a blog, and I would use something simple like Substack. You can offer a free subscription to Substack, and it's basically designed for things like this, where you write articles on whatever cadence that you want, once a week, whenever, twice a week, like totally up to you. So it's basically just a simplified blog. But what's important is that built into it is this idea that you want people to subscribe to your blog. So that's like that. Those are your people, and that's, I think, a really powerful thing to be able to sell books and stuff. Is like, I don't have to promote my book on X or whatever it becomes, and depend on that, like, driving some people to pick up my book. I can just talk about it on my blog, and these people, are going to at least receive an email from me about the book, or they're going to receive an email about my most recent project that I'm doing, or that I'm offering PD. Now, with that said, email is not really something that I enjoy anymore either. Like, my inbox I have a very, very love-hate, mostly hate relationship with my inbox. I love the emails that I get from actual humans. I love, the few newsletters that I've subscribed to, but there's just so much gunk and junk in there that a lot of stuff can just kind of get lost for me. And I think that happens to a lot of people that read my blog too. So Substack would be option one. Option two for me, though, would be YouTube. The reason YouTube is because it's a platform that does give me life. I use YouTube on a daily basis. I use it to just watch people talking about things that I think are interesting. So it might be science, it might be current events, it might be film. Um, but I really do enjoy YouTube as a part of my life. And I think that with this rapid adoption of AI that we're seeing, uh, like I think YouTube's kind of the safest. Okay, and I know that there's people that are predicting like YouTube's just going to be filled with AI generated Dave Stewart's, like reading AI generated Dave Stewart language or whatever. Like that's going to become common on YouTube. Maybe it will. It'll be a shame if it is. But I just still think people like, I mean, it's just a very personal medium. You know, like you can hear my voice right now. You can look at my eyes right now. So if I was starting again, I might consider just starting there and learning. And there's a lot of good stuff on YouTube about how do you start a YouTube channel and like all the strategy related to that. And you can go crazy with all that stuff. So, but that might be the other direction I would go. But I would pick a niche. I'd pick something very specific. So like, you know, for Caroline, I might pick not just math, but AI plus math, maybe. AI to me is kind of like the Common Core 13 years ago, in that everyone's talking about it. It's affecting all teachers all over the place. And I don't see like a lot of quality stuff from actual practicing teachers in a classroom grappling with, okay, I was in math class the other day and I saw a student doing this with AI. Here's what I did. Or, okay, the other day my students and I used AI for this thing and I think that it actually was helpful. So that might be what I would do if I was starting out today. Yeah, one of those two, newsletter or YouTube. And I would not pick both because one of the ways that I find time is by not doing everything. I never put much time into Twitter. I never put much time into building a Facebook group. And that's why I had time to write 1,000 articles in 13 years. All right. So this is kind of related, so I won't talk about it for long, but I think there are two important words for building an audience: consistency and generosity. Consistency and generosity. So I used to early on think every blog article is like a little fishing lure in the water, and you get to throw out as many lures as you want. So it's not a good idea to throw just bad lures out there, just crappy little lures that you don't really think are helpful. But if you can just throw a lot of really helpful things out on the internet and make them accessible to people, eventually through Googling or word of mouth or whatever, like slowly people find good stuff. I think the internet is pretty good at helping people find good stuff. And I say pretty good because one thing I've seen in my own blog and website is that AI is starting to change how people find stuff on the internet. I can ask Twitter's AI, which is called Grok. I can ask it anything about Dave Stewart Jr.'s blog, and it knows everything. So when I'm looking for an old blog article that I wrote, I don't even go to my own blog anymore to find it. I go to something like Grok because it's just going to find it plus a bunch of related things. So the reason I bring this up is because a big concern that I have with AI as a creator is just for people that depend on folks coming to their website and like subscribing to their newsletter. I think AI has negatively impacted us in that way. Now, on the other hand, it's hopefully making it easier for people to find the thing that they're looking for. So that's the generosity part. The whole idea with generosity is, how can I genuinely try to put something out there, whether it's a video or a newsletter, that I think can help someone? And usually the way I answer that question is, well, this helped me today in my class. This thought helped me the other day when I was struggling. So maybe it could help someone else. And I think if that's kind of your approach, like, first and foremost, this project is going to help me get better at teaching, clearer, express some things I want to express about teaching. Second, it might help someone else. I think if that's kind of your approach, like over time, you'll accrue some people. There's a lot of faith in that, but also I've I've seen it. I've seen it happen. This is another good one. Where is my coffee? Oh, please. All right, so this is another really good question because this one is about what's going on here. Sorry, that is really annoying. Okay, I just fixed the double Dave. I didn't know the double Dave was happening. Yeah, so earlier I mentioned, if you want to start a YouTube channel and you want to use that to like give you a possibility of writing a book someday, so that you could say on your book proposal, like, hey, I have a YouTube channel, there's 500 people subscribed and it's growing by 10 people a week or whatever. Then you're probably going to need to do some research about how do you grow a YouTube channel. But the problem with that is that when you start to go down the rabbit hole of how to build an audience online, it's a lot like teaching in the sense of you will quickly have a to-do list that is 9 miles long, and you'll have all these people that you can find on the internet saying, you got to do this, you got to do this, and they'll be disagreeing with each other. And so like, it's just a whole discipline and world unto itself. And I've experienced in my life, like how you can really get in your own head learning all this stuff about like creating online, and it can start to get in the way of actually creating online like you dreamed of doing when you started. So I would say, balancing in this way is a lot like balancing in real life. The more you practice standing on one foot, the easier it's going to become. But it does get wobbly at times, you can fall over sometimes, but having the intention of balancing is really key. I really haven't done much work on branding myself. I don't know, like something about the language to me is just like a bit dehumanizing, like branding yourself. I remember early on someone kind of saying like, you got to have a brand, man. You got to have a brand. And I'm just like, I don't know if I do, man. I don't know if I do. I think I'm just going to try to be as much of who I actually am as a thinker, teacher, reader, writer on the internet. And that, to me, is the light yoke of being a creator. But I'll say that when you do that, you're not going to become famous fast. Still waiting on that one. But, like, you will attract similarly genuine people. And that's probably the best, like, treat that I get is meeting people like you, Caroline, who have never met in person, would never have gotten to meet otherwise, but like I've learned so much from you and our correspondence over the years. And there's just a lot of genuine people that I get to meet by putting out like genuine stuff. Sometimes it's happy, sometimes it's a bit somber, sometimes it's a really technical little trick, sometimes it's like a broad overarching approach. I'm just like making stuff that I think is helpful. So if I have a brand, it would be, like he's like the teacher next door. He's just kind of like me. Like I'm not trying to be somebody that I'm not, because I know in my classroom today, like I saw evidence today, that I'm not the world's best teacher. And I've written about how that's not my goal. I want to be a good teacher who also has a life. And I believe teaching is incredible, but I don't think it's worth like giving your whole soul to. So that would be my answer to that. That was a pretty good one. All right, biggest mistake to avoid. Yeah. So here, I would say like pick one thing. That is the thing that you want to do. So newsletter, YouTube. I said earlier, pick one and just do that for at least a year. If you really want to dedicate some time to this, if you want this to be part of who you are as a teacher, this like I'm also sharing my work with others. Like pick a thing that you can get good at, a medium that you intend to just apprentice yourself to and get in the discipline of just regularly published work or regularly published videos. And like ignore people when they're like, well, you got to be on TikTok because why would you just be on YouTube when you can be on TikTok? And oh, also on YouTube, like you got to do shorts, and you got to do live streams. Like, don't do all that stuff. Just pick one thing and try to become really good at that one thing through intentional, deliberate practice. And then as you sort of feel like, okay, I'm kind of in a flow with writing blog articles, like this feels good. But man, there was really like a video that I would have liked to have made with that last blog article where I just like explained something verbally because I think it would have come through more clear. That's kind of why my YouTube channel started, because I was just like, I just want to say this, and I have my phone, so I'm just going to like film this video. So that would be the thing. That would be the thing. And then just like maybe big mistake number 2 would be to expect overnight success. I think that my blog for the whole first summer that I worked on it, and that first summer I wrote, basically I was just trying to read through the Common Core and write a blog article in every section. So there's like 40 articles to write. And I just published them whenever they were done. So some nights I'd stay up late and I would write 3 articles and I would just publish them all. And I think at the end of that summer, I had maybe 100 email subscribers. So that's not very successful on the whole metrics angle. You know, you can't do much with 100 email subscribers. But I would say those are kind of the hardest 100 to get. So early on, you just need to celebrate those small wins. Celebrate when someone finds your work and you look at your email list or you look at your YouTube subscribers, you're like, I don't even know this person. Like, yes, that's awesome. It's working. Somebody clicks the little like button on YouTube, which, you know, that's a downside to YouTube, is that you're going to get those little sort of oversimplified pieces of feedback. You don't always know what they mean. I mean, another thing that I hate about YouTube is like the views, you know. You see those views and then you go watch some other channel and it has like 10 times or 1,000 times those views and you're just like, what am I doing wrong? Probably not anything. Just keep doing it. Just keep doing it. So you really have to be patient. You got to be patient. You got to pace yourself and remember that when you set out to do this, you were probably hoping that it would be enjoyable, you know? So it can be enjoyable. And I think for the most part, it should be enjoyable. It should be hard too, but kind of like it's kind of like our classes, you know? I want my class to be enjoyable. I also want it to be hard, because both those things, you know, they kind of Venn diagram together. Thanks, Caroline. I'm glad the Double Dave was entertaining to you. Okay, so that is the main questions that I think that I have. Yeah, it is. So I will hang out for another minute in case anyone's here wants to just throw anything out there. Because I think, like I said at the beginning, there's a lot of room in this world of creating for teachers. There's just a lot of room for people that actually teach. I mean, the folks that I really respect most who write stuff for teachers or make stuff for teachers is the folks who put out good work while still being in the classroom. You know, that's a small list for me. But some of my best friends who have gone before me, they're pretty much all the people that I connect with most who write books are the ones that stayed teaching while doing it, because it's a unique way of life, and it's a choice, and I think it's a smart choice, but it's unique. The next book, Caroline. Next book. Good question. So it'll probably be The Will to Teach. I've been slow to start The Will to Teach to follow up this one. But basically, it was before the Green Book came out that I said this is a trilogy. This is the Heart of the Work trilogy. Okay, so these 6 things kind of laid out a vision of overall what we can do in the classroom. Will to Learn went super deep into such an important topic of love, student motivation. And then the will to teach will be, well, what do we do? The reason I've been daunted by that project is because I mean, this year has been a hard year for me. Like, just I've gone through a lot of loops on the teacher's journey of being like, demoralized at times and stressed out at times and just like pulling my hair out at times. So, I know that's a good place to write that book from, right? Because it's real, but it's also, yeah. So it might be a book that I start this summer. And then sometimes in my mind, I'm like, well, what if you just make like a pop-up debate book? Because that would be such a less, daunting project. And I love pop-up debates so much. And I've learned a lot from watching people implement them. So maybe it'll be that. Maybe I'll do that before the Will to Teach. But the Will to Teach is the next big one. One thing I've learned this school year. So probably the big through line in my learning this year has been grappling with the AI thing. I've had some existential moments, some of which I've shared on the blog, where it's just like, holy cow, this stuff. It's funny because I actually wrote an article that I now think, I've now only left it on here to laugh at myself, but I wrote, ChatGPT ain't no thing but a chicken wing. No thing but a chicken wing. So this was like, ChatGPT came out in November 2022. So this was kind of early in 2023. And I was like, no, we're good, man. We're good. This is not going to replace us. It's not going to. So, but I've had a lot of moments this year where it's like, it's getting a lot better at stuff. Definitely moments as a writer where I'm just like I'm not going to, but I could show you how traffic on my blog has like really gone down as AI has gotten better. But what's weird is that the server load for my blog, so the people that I pay to host my blog, they've been like knocking on my door the last few months like, dude, your server load is crazy. Like, you got to pay for a bigger server or whatever. And I'm just like, these aren't people visiting my blog. Like, these are, this is when you type into ChatGPT, like, go find an article from Dave Stewart about student motivation, and ChatGPT will say, okay, searching, pulling up 30 websites in 5 seconds. Like, that is what is actually happening on my blog. So yeah. So what's the lesson from that? The lesson is basically like where I'm at right now with AI is, weirdly, a picture that came to me that this is dark, okay? But like, let's say that AI really does like absolutely transform the work of the teacher. It just like completely, makes a whole generation of students totally dependent on technology to even think, to even do very, very basic stuff. Like, what if it's like the advent of the iPhone and social media and smartphones, but it's just like even worse? So the dark picture I had was, in the movie Titanic, at the end, like the musicians are like playing the music while the ship is like teetering up, like teetering up. They're just like playing classical music. That came to me as like, okay, if this all is going to go really, really bad, like let's at least play some beautiful music as like society. None of us got to like vote if we want this AI revolution to come in. But if this is going to go really bad, education is one of the most beautiful things that there is, one of the most timeless human endeavors that we've ever engaged in as a species. So let's just keep those of us that understand education, understand what a math education is about, what a history education is about, English education. Let's just keep playing beautiful music and creating spaces where students can encounter these cosmoses of the disciplines. You know what I mean? Because, I know, Caroline, that you know what I'm talking about. Like, there are just these moments of beauty that happen in just average classrooms where the teacher really understands the task, understands what it is that math is about or whatever your subject is. There's these moments of beauty and transcendence and meaning and purpose that can only be had through engaging in the kind of work that we do with our students. So with that said, I think it's much more likely that, in fact, we will just need to become even better than we already are as a profession at understanding how learning works and how student motivation works. So there's an incredible YouTube video I want to share with you guys. What's it called? YouTube AI Veritasium guy. Yeah, this. So this right here. All right, so it's a long talk, about a 45-minute talk, with great Q&A after. I ate up every last minute of this talk. This guy is a pretty cool creator in his own right, but here he really talks about how AI will change education. And what's cool is that he just starts with describing how the human mind works, how learning works, how the fast part of the brain works, the slow part of the brain, how you work with those two things and actually create an education. And so from there, from that understanding of how learning works, then he shifts into, okay, so what does this mean for AI? And he basically arrives at the conclusion that anyone who is thinking about this has already arrived at, which is like, AI can help in some ways, but you gotta use it in a smart way. You gotta use it in a way that doesn't take away the burden of learning, and make sure that you don't lose the burden of learning, because the burden is a real thing that makes humans transform. Just like weights in a weight room make human bodies transform. Solving a math problem with nothing but yourself and maybe a discussion with your partner or your teacher, that just is how you gain a deeper understanding of math. So I think he really has done us a great service as educators. So yeah, Caroline, I definitely want to share that on my blog. I think I can drop that in the chat. So yeah, I just think this dude crushed it, just absolutely crushed it, and I really love this a lot. So here we go. I'll put that in the chat. Yeah. So long way of saying I think we're just gonna have to really, those of us that understand how learning actually works, like science of learning stuff, we're gonna have to be a little more vocal. And we're going to have to, I think in schools around the country, there's either teachers who are like, okay, the jobs of the future are AI, so we need to have our kids doing tons of AI. And there's people who are like, no, never AI, never AI. The thing that really forced the issue on me this year is just some honest conversations with students about the ways that they were using AI outside of school, whether we wanted them to or not. The ways that they had become really savvy at hiding their use of AI where they felt that they needed to do that. So it was about January, February when I finally just put it out there with my students, said, okay, we're gonna just have open conversation about this. I'm gonna teach you how learning works, and then from there we're gonna come to conclusions about uses of AI that make sense because they partner with how learning works, and then uses of AI that don't make sense. So a use of AI that makes sense is, would you like some feedback on the quick write that you just did? I'd love to be able to give you feedback right now. I can't do that without spending about an hour. So here, let's go now that we've written this. Now let's go and let's give the AI whatever prompt. I want you to talk to me about my sentence variety. And let's see what it says. You can, I think, if you want to, use AI in some ways that make learning better. It's just most of the ways that most of our students are using AI aren't that. They're just, I don't want to do this. This is hard. This is annoying. Hey, AI, you do this. Let me take a picture of my math problem. You do this, and it'll show the work. And a lot of times now it will be right. And so there you go. Math teacher, I did my work on my homework. And now all of a sudden we're on a test and we're like, shoot, I actually don't know anything. Yes, Mr. Edwards, this is live. What's up? Yeah. So there you go, Caroline. That's what I have to say about that. That's my lesson. Biggest lesson learned from this year of teaching. And I'm definitely going to share that video, Caroline, on the blog, because I just think it's, man, it's so beautiful. See, we're bringing it around full circle now, because that's a guy who had an idea, did a lot of work to prepare a talk, gave the talk, shared it on the internet, and now it's blessing people like me and helping me to be encouraged and think a little more clearly and just understand, like, hey, there's some hope here. There's some people that actually, like, understand the beauty and value of an education, a true education, not just a school that makes kids do work, right? We want to be way more than that. We want to help young people to care about the beautiful, timeless, good work of learning, the type of work that you can put learning into any area of your life. Genuine, humble. I want to just dig deeper right now. Learning, and I'll pay you $20 if it doesn't make that part of your life a little bit better. It's going to make it harder. Might make it a little annoying at times. You know, might keep you up at night sometimes. But gosh, it's not going to make your life worse. Learning doesn't make our lives worse. Our seniors just left the high school today for their last day, and they walk through the halls. They kind of go through the whole district, walk through the halls. They end at the high school, and guess how many of those kids said to me, you know what? I'm mad I learned so much. Nobody learned too much. Nobody learned too much. People don't complain about that. People love to say, oh, I don't use anything I learned in high school, but they never say, I learned too much in high school. And some of that's on us, but some of that's just the beauty, the power, the goodness of learning. So, all right. Well, it's about 4 o'clock. I appreciate the questions, those questions that were submitted in advance. I hope, folks, that you found those questions and that you can kind of get whatever from them that will be beneficial to you. I definitely wanted to do this just as a way to say thank you for those who have read. Thank you to those who've mentored me and helped me on my journey, and I hope that this has helped you. So I appreciate y'all. I hope that you have a beautiful weekend, just with your family, with your pets, with your, take a walk. Just do good stuff. That's my plan, and I'm grateful to be on this journey with so many good people. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next time.